All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and take my materials with my clay or with your tape. You're just gonna find a spot kind of in front of you that you can set it down. I am putting it so that the smallest part of my egg is near the top, but you can position your egg however you want to, that you're gonna want to draw. I'm going to kind of stick it in there. And then now it's kind of set up for me so that I don't have to hold it and I can see it right there. Okay, so for this part of the process, you are going to be sketching the outside line and shape of your egg. So eggs are pretty ovally, but they are a lot of the eggs are kind of thinner up at the top, and then they get a little bit more bulbous, like around the bottom. Whoop, I just made marks on my egg. That's all right. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and just do that. Make sure, we've talked about this in class, make sure that you, instead of drawing from memory of what you think an egg looks like, actually keep your eyes focused on this outside line right there more than you're looking at your drawing. And that way you can really follow how the line goes. A lot of people kind of just focus right here on the paper and don't look at the object that they're drawing. So it'll just help you a little bit. And remember, none of this has to be perfect at all. This is all just for fun. So I'm gonna start up here, and I'm kind of holding my pencil not straight up and down. That'll make a really heavy dark line, but a little bit to the side. And then I kind of make small little lines that I just go around with, kind of like scratch marks a little bit, but really light and gentle pressure. So I've started at the top, now it's getting wider over here. So I'm gonna make it wider too. And then it comes down like this, and it has a little bit closer of a, hi birdie, a little bit closer down here. Remember, this is just for fun, does not need to be perfect, birdie. It's hard to draw when you do that, buddy. Okay, you can be in here too. All right, so here I go on this side, and eggs are fairly symmetric. So really, whatever you did over here, I'm just kind of doing the mirror image of that over here. So pretty basic egg like that. All right, so the next part is where we're gonna start shading our egg, and that's where it's gonna start having the parts where it looks a little bit more rounded. We're not going for perfection, this is just for practice again, but for my egg, the light source is coming from the sun here, and so the lightest part of my egg, the brightest, or you know, the lightest, brightest, whatever you want to say, is going to be at the top where the sun is hitting it. But then as it comes down, especially as I look here, this part around the edges, actually both sides, and then definitely near the bottom is where my shadows are created. So those are the parts that I'm focusing on now, is where my shadows are. So whenever you start to create shadows with your pencil and your lines, I suggest this, if you have a better way that works better for you, that's totally fine. I actually kind of hold my pencil sometimes like this. I'm trying to get this like almost sideways so that more of the lead is going to be working sideways to make a lighter, almost like a coloring, more than like a straight up and down drawing. That's gonna give me a really heavy dark line, and I kind of want like a softer one. So especially in this first part. So I'm just gonna kind of hold it to where, I think I'm gonna hold back on my pencil like this and kind of sideways is what's gonna work best because I'm on a high pad of paper. So I'm just gonna kind of come like this. Now all the parts where the sun is hitting, the lightest parts, I am not gonna do any shading on those areas. So this part right up here at the top is where I'm pretty much leaving that part white for this part, because it's just pure sun. So here I go, I can see shadows starting here with the heaviest about this far and then down. So I'm just gonna start going, and I am just making these kind of very, very gentle, light markings. I feel like it gets a little darker a little bit right there, so I'm just gonna come in a bit. Definitely around my edges. So I'm coming in here. I feel like it comes in here. And this, you kind of, like, you can squint. Also, if you take a picture of it on your parents' camera or on yours, and then switch it to black and white, or grayscale, then you'll really, I feel like it's a little easier to see the shaded parts. But otherwise, you're just kind of doing, and I'm just gonna go in here and do this real quick. So you can see these shaded parts. And I do see some lighter shading in here. We'll figure that out in a minute, but I will add in some here. So you can just kind of see the way that I hold my pencil. Practice that a little bit. Everybody's gonna have a way that is gonna feel a little bit better to them. So just kind of start feeling that out for yourself and decide the best way that you want to hold your pencil and do that. So you can notice that, like, up here as the gradation of the shadow, it's darker down here, I can tell, which I'm going to put that in a minute, but I'm blending it almost like to where I'm putting even lighter pressure so that it's just barely touching, and you can just see a little bit of that. So at this point, sometimes I just use my finger, and I'm going to start blending a little bit and see. I'll use a clean finger for the lighter parts, like that, so that I'm not getting the heavier parts, and then I have a finger for my darker parts down here. All right. So at this part, I can see the shadows, but I still could make it look a little bit more 3D by adding a little bit darker lines for the darker parts of the shadow. So I'm really going to decide I have my white part here, and then I have a little bit of the first stage of my shadow. But now I'm going to leave that for most of the egg, but then I can tell parts that are really darker, and so that's going to be right on the edge line and then definitely near the bottom. So at this part, I'm just going to start applying a bit more pressure. So here I go. So you want to make sure that you have those different layers of kind of the white to the light shadowing to the heavier, darker shadowing. You're just creating like steps to your shadows almost. So here I'm coming in with this, definitely down here is super shadowy. I'm kind of moving my pencil so that it's going in different directions. Sometimes people do cross-hatching, which I'll do. Actually, I'll save that for the next layer, and then you can kind of see that a little bit more. So heavier down here still, because this is my darkest. Like when I look with my eye, this is definitely like the darkest area. So I'll go ahead and, sorry. And again, this is just good practice for us with drawing. This does not need to be perfect. And, you know, I mean, this is just for like, it's just for fun. It's just for quarantine fun. So no biggie. This part, I am going to just put that darker part right on the edge like that so that I save my sort of step down shadowing from my light shadowing in there. I don't want to cover that up. That'll help with making that kind of rounded look. All right, so whenever I get to a good place where I feel like I've kind of reached some different shadowing steps there, again, I'm going to pull in my finger And then this is just a good way to blend. You don't have to do it, but I like to use all of my fingers to kind of blend things out. So there we go with that one. So that is all white to 1-step shadow, 2-step shadow with the darker. I'm gonna go ahead and do a 3-step shadow. And I think I did that in the directions too, so I'll just kind of follow that through. And you can do as much as you want. You could go to full-on black scale if you want to, but I think I'll just stop at 3 shadows. So now I want to leave this part that's a little bit darker, and now I'm just gonna leave some of that and then just start covering up the darkest parts of even that layer. So again, it's all just this part right down here, kind of like halfway down my egg, and like a smile, like an upside down little Cheshire cat smile. So here I go. This part, I'm gonna go ahead and lift my brush up my pencil up, and this way I have more of that dark quality rather than the side light. So I just start kind of moving my pencil up so that I can really have more control, and I can get those I'm so sorry guys, that pressure can be even a little harder there. So here I go with that. I'm going up. Remember, I don't want to cover up everything from that last layer that I did, so I am being careful not to do that, but I am kind of just going back and forth there a little bit. The darkest part will definitely be that line on the outside edge. And it kind of, that shadow, that super dark shadow just kind of stops right about there. So this is where, if you wanted to, you could start doing those little cross-hatching lines that we've talked about in class too for most of you. But if you want, that's kind of just like making those hashtags, kind of where you make those little lines in one direction, like scratch marks, and then go the opposite direction. And it just kind of makes a nice way to kind of get those areas and have, that needs definitely a little blending there, a little lighter. And I'll do some over here too. Some people use this as what they do for their art all the time, and things just look so realistic and perfect and 3D and everything. And I know a lot of you really love to practice this kind of art. This is not the art that I usually do. I'm a lot more loose with stuff, and so, but it's good practice for all of us, and so it's good to do for all of us. All right, so for this last part, this is where you might just redefine your edge. And I'm not gonna go, I don't think I'll go all the way to the top because that's that light sun part from your light source, but I will do kind of along that edge, and it just will help define it, but I don't want to make it too stark to where it's gonna stand out and really make that, all the focus go to that area. Now I'm going to blend a bit, and we'll call that pretty good. This is where you can just keep going. Eventually you just have to say like, all right, that's good enough for today. So this is where I'm going to stop with my egg for right now, and then we'll come back with part 2. If you want to just kind of clean up that edge to make that, you can. See, this is where it's just hard for us artists to stop. So this is why I like looser art. Okay, done.